right. Well, hello, and welcome everyone to our BG5 Live. This is episode number 8, and it is May 28th, 2019, and we're taking a look at moving from delusion to independence. But before we get started, of course, we want to introduce and say hi to our panel. So let's start with Lavina. Lavina.
Hey, everybody. Nice to be here. So glad that you can join us today.
Great, thank you. And Natalie.
Hi, yes, it's wonderful being here again and that everything worked smoothly this time.
Woohoo! We got our Facebook Live working, we got the broadcast working, I have a new computer and that's working, so everything's working really great. So wonderful. And Chris. Hey.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, welcome. We're so glad. Look, we're already moving out of delusion and into the freedom and independence from technology. This is awesome.
I love it. I love it. So again, what we're taking a look at today is moving from delusion to independence. So one of the things to understand is that we are in changing times. Things are shifting, things are changing, and we're right in the middle of that change and that shift. And we're shifting from the era of planning into the era of the individual. And part of planning is about this illusion and delusion, which we're going to be talking about today. And that when we take a look at sort of what's happening yesterday we were in the illusion and delusion, and today we're in the sharpness that bursts bubbles. So we're going to take a look at, in a sense, how you have to burst the bubble of illusion and delusion in order to get to independence. Right? And this is what's really important in understanding our own career design, where we fit into the big picture. And I think also as society as a whole and businesses as a whole as well. Businesses moving from this idea of delusion and illusion, popping the bubble so that we can really move into independence. So let's take a look at that today. So, as I was mentioning, times are changing. And so the world pattern since 1961, and we moved into this pattern of the 16-1, which is delusion in 1961. It's part of, and is a big part of the era of planning. And with this delusion, what this all means, the 16-1, and this was the energy of yesterday, this delusion, this false enthusiasm, the public communication of inevitably unrealized claims, the tendency to express fantasy as fact. Now, you can see the image here with this fake news. It's a very interesting place that we are in currently. And think about it. We've been there since 1961. So a lot of us were born during this period. A lot of us know nothing different. This has been sort of the frequency, the energy that we're accustomed to, that we're used to. And if we take a look at, what's happened during this time frame since 1961, take a look at movies, take a look at television and film. We have been able to, through technology, have virtual reality, all these different things that have, made fantasy almost really sort of come alive, if you will. So I would like to hear from our panel before we move forward as far as where we're moving towards in the future. I just wanted to talk a little bit and spend a little bit of time talking about and observing and contemplating what this means to live in this era since 1961 of illusion delusion, the tendency of expressing fantasy as fact. So anything that any of our panel would like to share here?
Well,
go ahead. Go ahead, Molly.
I didn't realize it was since 1961 actually, and well, some of you that know me a little bit better, I have a daughter that is half Cuban, and Cuba is the way it is since 1959, and it's all about delusion and and false enthusiasm and the way they communicate there. So it's fascinating that it's actually that period of time. I'm wondering for a long time what will become of the country, and now after Castro, so to say. So yeah, the bubble will burst
Exactly.
in the future time. Interesting.
Yeah. You know, and it's interesting to see how this shows up, you know, all over the world. You know, this is a global pattern. This affects all of us. You know, so it's kind of interesting to see where it shows up in all of these different areas. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I was thinking about how, you know, again, how things when, and this is going to be, I apologize, it's kind of crass, but like, think about when you have a blister or something like that, that as it's growing, you're like, oh, that's not going to be fun, right? And it's almost worse, like right at the moment that it's going to burst. And so I think, you know, watching this, I was born in 68, so you know, watching this all my life and then looking at where we're at right now and how a lot of people are like freaking out. And in some ways I go, yeah, this is, you know, it's cyclical where we've been watching this for, you know, decades, but also it, you know, the fact that it may feel like or appear to be getting worse before it gets better is sort of that healing process, that cleansing process of really, you know, it's going to get a little bit, it's no fun waking up. I mean, think about trying to wake up a teenager or something. Like, waking up is not sometimes easy to do. People don't want to wake up. And so it can be a little uncomfortable and painful. And so, you know, I'm kind of like, yeah, let's bring it on. And also, I get it. Some people are not going to like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, you know, a really great analogy, Chris. You know, it really illustrates that sort of dynamic there.
I
Wow.
kind of want to verbalize a bit about the trait itself, which is our ability to identify with some kind of logical process. So if we have two sides of the same coin here, at the foundation, at the base of it, we have it's either factual or it's not. So it's just, we're at the not part, and that's just part of the name of the game. That's what we're seeing. That's what we're experiencing. It's part of what this, like you were saying earlier before class, or before the session, before our show, our BG5 live show, you were saying about how in class that the generational aspect here, they just don't know any different. Could you share a little bit more about that, Karen?
Yeah, yeah, it was really fascinating in my BG5 certification course that I was teaching today. We were talking about the millennials as well, and right now, if you know millennials, that you know, there's kind of the joke that they kind of take everything for granted, and they live in a sense in this sort of fantasy world that everything's going to be taken care of for them, and if you think about it, you know, we can blame the millennials, but take a look at, you know, what they were brought up in, you know, and it's nobody's fault. You know, it's part of how everything is designed. And so they were, in a sense, brought up, they were born and raised in this time of false enthusiasm, you know, the tendency to express fantasy as fact. Yeah. You know, the playing video games, again, the tendency to express fantasy as fact, you know, thinking that everything's going to be taken care of for them. They don't really need to do anything, you know, sort of this delusion, this sort of fantasy world. And again, it's no one's fault. You know, it's sort of what's been there. And what we're going to be taking a look at today is what's in store for us is this bursting of the bubble. Like, it's not, we're right at that precipice of it changing. And so things that we have learned, you know, for many of us since we were born are going to be changing. I've asked myself this many times. What if everything that we have been taught to believe is a lie? Just consider that. What if everything that we've been taught to believe is a lie? And so I take everything with a grain of salt, you know, and everything has a bit of truth in it. Everything has a bit of, not so truth in it, or fantasy versus fact in it as well. So often I say I believe everything and I believe nothing. Right? So what if the world was just kind of turned on its head and we have all of these, quote unquote conspiracy theories, but what if all the conspiracy theories are truth and what we've been, seeing in the news is fantasy? I don't know, right? But it's something that's something to consider. So in a sense, it's believing everything and nothing so that, when everything starts to play out, I'm not shocked, or I may be shocked, but it's not going to be a disruptive shock. It's going to be like, oh, so that's how it really is. So we don't know how deep this illusion and delusion is, but just realize that it's there. And again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of the pattern. So in recognizing the pattern, we can then deal with this. And this is important to realize in business as well. The illusion and delusion of what business is all about, or what connecting is, or building teams is all about. One of the things that we take a look at in BG5 certification is, in a sense, what the underlying mechanics are and how to make decisions correctly so that businesses run the way that they're supposed to run, instead of based on any kind of illusion and delusion of how it should be. That we actually are able to see the underlying mechanics of what's actually there.
I keep hearing the word presence as you're speaking. Part of this moving out of delusion and into independence is that waking up, but it's like being present to what is, not what we've constructed it to be, but what is right here in this moment, and then responding to that depending on our decision-making strategy to what is true for us as individuals, but then also as individuals who know that they're part of the collective.
Exactly.
Right? In a way, we've been in that delusion that we're not, and that we're independent and individuals, and yet it's through that that's the delusion that, like you were saying, what if it's flipped upside down? I think people are waking up to it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, very fascinating.
That was beautifully shared, Chris. Really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, to see too, the illusion, I never thought of it that way, but that is one of the things that is kind of people are waking up to, is you hear it all over. People, we're one, but they're not really some people, it's just lip service. They're not really actually embodying that. And this is collective reality, which is a shared reality, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, this is shared logic, and it really is interesting because it ties into what we talked about last week. Because last week the pattern was in the 20. Right? So the major shift happens in 2027, but that shift has already begun. We're in the middle of it. And so where we're moving from this delusion into, and this speaks to exactly what Chris was just saying, we're moving into wisdom. Remember when we took a look at the 20, this is about being present and contemplating here in the now.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Exactly. So this is where we're moving to. So here's the good news. We've been living in this delusion, but what we're moving towards is we're moving towards wisdom. So we're moving towards the contemplation in the now, which results in the ability to apply understanding. Mm-hmm. It's the establishment for the benefit of society, the benefit of values, the benefit of ideals and their patterns, and how they can be understood and applied. So now no longer living in this fantasy, but the wisdom then to apply what we have learned, the ability to transform individual. This is the individual moving from this collective to the individual, the ability to transform individual awareness for general application and understanding. So through this all, through this fantasy, through this illusion and delusion, if we take a look at trait 41 is new beginnings, and it is about the daydreamer. It is about fantasy. It's where things start, right? And through how we start, then we can start to gain wisdom based on, oh, look at how we've, in a sense, been taken advantage of in the past. Like Chris was saying, we think that we're free, right? But are we really?
Mhm.
And how are we controlled, and we're simply not aware of it? I mean, if we take a look at it, one of the things we take a look at in BG5 certification also, is how, and OC16 as well, is how are we conditioned, right? How are we conditioned by small groups or larger groups? We think we're free, but are we really? And we aren't really free until we can really trust our individual decision-making strategy. That's where freedom comes from.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. Anything else you guys would like to add here?
My perspective when you were sharing that is, okay, so we know that the trait 20 is about individuality, and at its core, it's looking for self-empowerment. So the ultimate goal then of this wisdom is that we're establishing all of these things for our individual self-empowerment as well, not just awareness, but all of us collectively moving to self-empowerment, and how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Anything else, Chris or Natalie, that you would like to add here?
Something that's for the last 25 years has been on my mind um, is because my background is as a therapist, and I remember when I was in my outpatient, I had to do not outpatient, but the supervision. I had to, whatever, what
Right.
I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I had to see patients, and I remember thinking then that in some ways psychology has actually, like the whole field of it has liberated people in some ways, and in others have created a horrible construct that has seemed to be liberating people from delusion, but actually creating delusion and creating just so much self-judgment and not empowering people. So I think that I think we're really seeing a big shift in that. One of the reasons I love human design, even as a almost diagnostic tool, is to say, look, this is a mechanical issue. This person is not, I mean, there's such a range there, but I just think that even in mental health, we're really waking up to what truly is empowering, and how much of the delusion or mental health issues are constructed in a family. They're co-created in the collective, and then expressed by individuals. And so that's also what I'm seeing, and that's kind of a point of view that I've been exploring for the last, many years. And this sort of goes along with it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Chris.
Yeah. Everybody's probably like, I was just going to have lunch today and maybe have a light, just watch BG5 live and have a nice light lunch. And they're all like, oh my God, really deep. Anyway, welcome everyone.
Yeah.
To Deep Thoughts.
Anyway. Yeah, but it's really fascinating. I think one of the things that you said too, that or one of the things that I connected to is that right now there's so much division. There's so much polarization. There's so much, kind of these two sides, and everybody's blaming everyone else. And one of the things about, BG5 and understanding your career type and understanding small groups and partnerships and large groups is really understanding that there's no blame. Just like what you were saying, Chris, it's really the mechanics that are operating underneath. And when you can understand those mechanics, there is no one to blame. And we can truly accept and love who we are we don't have to fit into, whatever this construct is. We can really love ourselves based on our own career design and what we are designed to do, who we're designed to be, where we're designed to work, and let everything else go. We struggle so much with this illusion and delusion that we have to, we have to be a certain way, we have to do a certain thing, we have to follow a certain path. If you didn't go to college, or if you did go to college, whatever it happens to be, we have this idea that there's one right way for everyone, which isn't the case.
Yeah, normal.
Exactly. That when you can truly own your own career design and what you are here to do, it allows you, and that's again where freedom comes from, is really being able to liberate yourself. We're talking about moving towards independence, to liberate yourself, to love yourself, to operate correctly according to your career design, to find the career that is not just about making money, but is really fulfilling what you're here to do on the planet, fulfilling your life work and your life purpose.
Yeah, so many people feel like they don't fit in. And I
Yeah.
think part of the reason they don't fit in or feel like they don't fit in is because they're trying to fit into a construct that and jam themselves into it. And when you realize who you truly are, just like you were saying, Karen, then fitting in, you naturally fit in. You can't not fit in.
Yes.
And you see again that we are all connected in the whole, and that and something is moving us as much as we're moving in space. And and building a business that way is amazing. I mean, there's so many constructs around business. And when we start to look at and bring in the career design information, it truly liberates teams.
Yeah.
And large and small businesses.
Yeah.
It's fascinating and awesome.
Exactly. So we have this change, right? This movement from this illusion, delusion, and into wisdom. So what has to happen in between? So that happens to be the theme for today. It's a quality too. It's the natural, and it's skills, and it's called the cynic. Right? In order to kind of get past the illusion, delusion, we have to be a bit cynical. So it is the sharpness to burst bubbles, and with Chris's analogy, where the most tension is right at that point before it bursts. And then when it bursts, it's kind of a shock, right? It's kind of disturbing, but then that's when the healing can start happening. So we're at this point where it's the sharpness to burst bubbles, and there's a lot of illusion and delusion bubbles that we've been living in. And it's time to start bursting those bubbles so that we can get past all of this divisiveness, get past all of this blaming each other, get, past all of this, polarization, and take a look at, again, how can we be individually ourselves and empower not only ourselves, but others? So what's interesting with this is about self-reliance. It's not depending on others. Again, this is moving into self-reliance and the skill to judge objectively any claim regardless of rhetoric. So we've moved from this illusion, delusion of yesterday into the self-reliance and the skill to judge objectively any claim regardless of the rhetoric, regardless of what everybody is saying. Just because everybody says it's true doesn't mean that it's true, right? If I said, the sky is, the sky is red, and and then anybody who doesn't believe me that the sky is red is crazy, and then everybody starts, repeating that. And then, by the end, everybody says that it's red, but we look up and it's blue. So again, it's just because everybody says it's true doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. There has to be a self-reliance and the skill to judge objectively any claim regardless of rhetoric. And objectivity expressed through cynicism. And it can be also the compulsive cynic whose very cynicism is a source of enthusiasm. You've seen comedians and that type of thing that use this sort of cynicism as a form of humor, and it's a sort of a source of enthusiasm as well. And it really is this that leads to the third quality of the 16. So it's interesting, this progression, moving from illusion and delusion to the cynic. The third quality of the 16, which is tomorrow, is independence, self-generating and sustaining enthusiasm. So it's almost like, what we do in BG5 and taking a look at your career design is, bursting that bubble, the sharpness to burst bubble, so that you can really see objectively who and what you're designed to do and who you're designed to be, so that you can experience this quality of independence. Again, self-generating and sustaining enthusiasm, because you're being and you're doing what you're here to be and do. So Lavina or Natalie or Chris, anything you want to add here?
Well, it's funny, you might see me muting on a regular basis with you guys, because I just sit here and go, I'm really agreeing with seeing the flow of the energy. And I love that we've now shifted, because we went through a whole series of quality days. Now we're looking at this progression. And I'm wondering if we could maybe continue that progression to just see what's before and what's after, to help us understand the foundations of what each trait is. And one of the things that was that I was as an experience that I had, if I could share what happened to me this morning.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so there's a person out there on the internet who's taken human design and started making up things about it. And so somebody posted it into one of the groups that I'm a part of, and I got all of this wash of just what's going on and why, and that is, all of that is completely, but it's bull. It's really not. It's totally delusional. And people were agreeing with it. Oh yes, that's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But it really didn't fit into our program of what we teach. And so what was happening was, all of the people who knew better, like myself, sharpness, bursting that bubble, cynicism, really, this is not, and it got to the point where the moderator cut off that stream, because it was, people were really still just reading that and not the comments, and not realizing that this was a false post. And what I love about this is that we're moving to how do we, as a whole skill, how do we develop a skill? First, we have that foundation of whatever it is. Then we have to discern the second quality, what we're doing today. And then we have the trial and error, the third quality, which is actually figuring out, does this really work? So even though, people might come up with these illusions and delusions, at some point there might be some sorting and sifting to where we can find independence, and they can stand on their own 2 feet and develop some kind of skill and express it as a talent. So I'm not saying that person was wrong. It's wrong to call it what it isn't. That's the only thing, the mislabeling. You know what I mean? So that was the thing that really got my gizzard. And I'm feeling much better about it, though, because, everybody, just like you said, everyone has their place. Everyone has their process. So in order for us to all live our own career design, we need to honor everybody where they're at in their process.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, there's nothing wrong. It is the foundation of this 16th trait. And so, think about it, if, before you go to college, or, let's say that you want to become a BG5 consultant, right? You have kind of this, this fantasy of what it's going to be like, and, what the process is going to be, and you're going to be working with all of these businesses, and it's going to be so cool, and then it's like, then you get to the reality and you find, wow, it may be a little bit harder than I thought it was. It wasn't, this sort of, this bursting of the bubble that, oh, it's a little bit more difficult, but you have to get to the other side of the bursting of the bubble, because exactly what Lavina said, because then it's the trial and error. And then it's like, oh, that's how this works. Oh, it's not as, it's not this illusion delusion that I had to start with, but I can make it work. And this is how it works, in a very practical way. So people go through this process whenever they're developing a new skill. Whenever, Tiger Woods at the very beginning, he starting to learn golf, probably and a lot of, golfers or athletes, right?
Yeah.
This dream of, winning the Masters, or this dream of, competing in the Olympics, or this dream of, playing NFL football, whatever that happens to be. At first it's sort of this daydream, this illusion delusion, and then the bubble gets burst. So what happens after that bubble gets burst? Do you give up? Right? And say, oh, it wasn't really worth it. And you just give up? Or do you go, oh, right, this is reality. I have to deal with reality. And it's going to take trial and error. It's going to take practice. It's going to, you have to bring that enthusiasm to it to develop a skill. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in an instant. You have to, this is part of what skill is all about. You have to practice over and over and over and over and over to master that skill. And you take a look at any top athlete, they've had to practice over and over and over. And so I guarantee you that they've gone, this is the process of developing a skill, and so in a sense, we're developing our skill of being human. We're, and it started with this illusion and delusion, but we're moving into wisdom, but in order to get there, we need to burst the bubble.
Wow.
Yeah.
It reminds me what you just shared, that last piece about how overwhelming it can feel at the beginning of your training as a BG5 career consultant. It might feel like, wow, there's a lot of information here. How in the heck am I going to remember all of this stuff? And it takes that repetition over and over again of developing that skill through practice and applying the information. Yeah. And the actual mistakes that we make, I am this quality, but when you actually make a transgression or, some kind of misstep, those particular missteps can really bring a lot of clarity and awareness to the process of how this really does work. So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Beautiful. Anything, Natalie or Chris, that you would like to add?
Well, you were just talking about the millenniums, and I'm just when you were talking, I just see my daughter. She's 12, so she's even younger than the millenniums. But she's so, she's living the illusion, doing really nothing, and also being very, very cynical about everything. So I'm kind of thinking she's, the millenniums are really like, oh, living the illusion, and then she is like the next generation, the cynic, and on her way to just be herself. And when you shared that it's really about living your own design, and maybe we do not, we what we think is normal, and I'm as a good parent, a normal good parent, pushing her to go through school, but she's so resistant. So all things start to operate, but I don't have another way to now guide her, right? Than to just, even there's a law that we get punished if we don't do it.
Right.
So if she wouldn't go to school, if I would agree, then I would get on my list that I'm not a good citizen, right? Yep. So, yeah, but anyway, It's interesting. That's something I'm looking forward to as well, to see how the school systems will develop when
Yeah.
we get to wisdom and to independence and individuality, and you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They're gonna be in a major time of transition. And again, in that time of transition, just like Chris said at the beginning, when that blister first pops, it hurts, right? It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And so it takes some time. It doesn't heal, right away. It doesn't heal in an instant. It takes time to kind of heal, once that bubble was burst.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, and kind of in the parenting realm as well, I think about the times when either my parents or as a parent, when I've looked at, bursting the bubble, like how many of us have gone back to our parents as adults and we're like, oh, we're going to do this. And they're like, oh, you can't do that. Like, you shouldn't do that. Right. And I think that that's one of the things. And just like Lavina's example, I love that, where it's like, well, okay, that's incorrect. It's misinformation. All right. I'm not going to I don't want to shame you, but you do need to have the correct information. It's simply not correct. Right. There's a difference between shaming someone and going, oh my God, you're making this up, you're a liar, versus it's simply incorrect. And I think about even my son who's, talking about, oh, I'm thinking maybe I'd go into I want to be in the military. And I was like, what? Like, you can't even, you don't even like to wrestle with people. Like like and I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, you've been playing way too many, like way too many
Mm.
video games. You have the romantic vision of what this means. But I just asked him questions about it. And in the past, I could almost hear, like maybe even my mom going, oh my God, you don't want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And I just asked him questions and I thought, you know what, this is not my bubble to
Mm.
burst for him. This is me, I want to connect with him. I'm going to ask him questions and I want to hear, like, genuinely, what is the fantasy that he has about this? What is he really thinking? And I'm thinking, we've got a few years. He's probably going to change his mind a couple times too. So I think I guess my point is that, how we trust this process has a
Mm.
lot to do with the presence that we bring, that there are going to be people that want to be woken up and there's going to be people that don't want to be woken up. And I use that, like woken
Mm.
up, that from that delusion. And who are we to police it? I know myself,
Mm.
I'm like, I'm 50. The 50 values is my conscious son. I'm all like, yeah, let's
Mm.
police that. But the more we can relax into that and trust,
Mm.
trust the unfoldment, trust the design. It's the collective
Yeah.
that's unfolding as we watch, and we don't have to do anything
Yeah.
but witness it and maybe just, create a little comfort and ease for ourselves and for others as this process is happening. It's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And again, it is a process. And this is part of the process. The illusion and delusion, the bubble popping, the disruption of the bubble popping, but that leading to this independence. So sometimes this shock, is a part of the process, and it is a part of what's leading us into, sort of this next era. The 51 is the trait of shock, is the trait of gall, is the shock of initiation. So we're getting initiated into something new. So there's a lot of bubbles that are being popped. So again, don't make it wrong. And the more that you can be aware of it, the more that you can realize that this is what's happening and it's no one's fault. And it is, in a sense, sort of this great awakening. I think whether we like it or not, this illusion or delusion is going away. The bubble will be popped, whether you like it or not. So that kind of leads to this, this final slide. Times are changing and the whole direction is a shock, and it's going to be a shock. So to be able to operate correctly as yourself is to operate in a world that will demand nothing less. Again, we're moving to this self-empowerment. It is a world that will embrace those that can operate as themselves. And it will also mean a great deal of disorder and chaos and confusion to those who are lost in dependency, those that are lost in the illusion and delusion, because everyone was nurtured in it. And everything about our kind is rooted in this dependency. And part of the dependency is this illusion and delusion. And dependency is about giving up your own authority, meaning giving up your own decision-making strategy. And again, part of our career design is really getting us back to, as we've talked about today, who are we? What are we designed to do? Who are we designed to be? And how do we make decisions correctly? Because that's what's going to give us the independence, especially when all of the bubbles get burst. Yeah. So be prepared.
Amen.
Can I get a witness? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, any last words to wrap up our BG5 live? I think it was funny, we were discussing this after our last BG5 live. I myself am also learning so much in doing this, because it's almost like you get a peek into our own little private study group. So a lot of things are just coming to light, and we're seeing them and we're saying them as we're discussing it. So I'm just in awe, and I love this opportunity to be able to share this with all of you, and to go on this journey, especially as times are changing, kind of knowing that we're okay, even though, again, the whole direction is a shock.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. My part in this is I feel very grateful that we get to have this experience in a correct penta, and that we're experimenting with this and actually demonstrating that this is what it's like for us. I mean, even behind the scenes, we're like this. We're geeking out about this type of stuff. We're sitting here, our meeting is done, and we're geeking out about stuff. And we're just, and this is such a wonderful opportunity to be able to peek into the world of what it is to be a BG5 professional. Like, you live and breathe this, and you look at all of this, and you apply it. And so to be able to be a part of this with all of you is, each and one of you, is really beautiful. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Lavina. What about you, Natalie? Any last words to wrap everything up for today?
No, I just feel like the red airplane flying high to the sky.
Well, yes, your life work is individualism. Yeah. That's exactly perfect. That's you, Natalie.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
It is.
Beautiful. How about for you, Chris?
Yeah, I love these conversations because I feel even more hopeful. I mean, I'm a naturally hopeful person, and I naturally see things in the big collective realm, and how, there's something right about what's going on right now. I don't know what it is necessarily, but I trust it. Even everything, all of it, even the really crazy stuff that we've been seeing here in the United States and around the world. And I really do see how we can either go down the cesspool and think the whole world is ending, or go, maybe what's ending is a way of this delusion. And so what's been really great about this, and this conversation, and even in the OC16, is starting to really actually be able to map what is happening, the matrix. If I call it the matrix,
Yes.
we can see the matrix now. And so it's not just me kind of being Pollyanna hopeful. It's this deep record. There's been a couple times during this conversation where I just get a little misty and feel my heart open a little bit more to, it's going to be okay. Yeah. And it's not just me saying that like I'm in avoidance. It's like, I get that. It's really okay. Yeah. And that's what I hope that those of you who are watching this can get that on some level. And, and it's fun to have these conversations. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like I said, it's such a gift, and I think, the gift of understanding your career design is, again, accepting yourself. And, as we go deeper into, BG5 and OC16, it's like it's accepting humanity, right? But in order to accept humanity as it is, with all its with all its frailties, with all its, discretions, with the all the good and the light, all of the evil and the bad and everything in between, it all starts with really understanding and accepting ourselves. And when we can do that, that's when we can accept humanity. It's not the other way around. It's like, it's kind of this inside out. The more individual we can become, in a sense, the deeper we can connect with others. And that's, if we take a look at the map of the matrix, as Chris was saying, we can see that's also part of the, part of the design of the phase that we're moving into. Is we're moving into this, not only being more individual, but connecting at a whole different level. And in essence, what we're doing is we're synthesizing everything that has come before to create something completely new. And when you're creating something new, just as we see in the 41, in beginnings with fantasy and the daydreamer, with the 16:1, it starts with, in a sense, this fantasy, and then, there's a cynicism, there's the bursting of bubbles, but again, that leads to independence, so that's where we're headed. So thank you, each and every one of you, for joining us for our BG5 Live. Again, if you want to find out more about your own career design, how you make decisions, what your career type is, you can get a free report if you go to our website at bg5businessinstitute.com. And scroll down, there's a couple different areas where you can order your personalized report. And again, it's kind of a sample of the larger report, but it does give you the key elements of your unique career design. And as always, we'd love to have you in one of our courses or workshops. We're currently in the Profit Potential workshops and Profiting by Being You through Communication. So we're right in the middle of that. And then we have Profit by Being You through Identity and Direction coming up and starting in July. So would love to invite you to be a part of this series as well. So once again, thank you. Please join us live Tuesdays at 1 p.m. U.S. Pacific time. You can join us via Facebook in our BG5 study group, or you can join us live here in our Zoom room with BG5 Live as well. So thank you. We're going to wrap up for today, and we look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.